In this video, we're going to discuss what it means to default on your federal student loans. So if you miss a payment or if you make a payment late, you're considered to be delinquent. You haven't actually defaulted yet, you're just delinquent. You're going to be charged some fees, but you're not yet in default. However, if you don't make a payment for 270 days, in that case, you have defaulted on your student loans. And there are some important consequences to defaulting. First of all, your entire loan balance is going to be due immediately. So you can forget about all the repayment plans and so forth. All the repayment plans are the option to get a deferment or forbearance. Once you're actually in default, you no longer have an option to do those things. You owe the entire balance immediately, and it's probably going to be forwarded to a collection agency, and you'll start getting notices from them about the amount due. You're not going to be eligible for any more federal student aid as long as you remain in default. If you later clear up the default and pay off the debt and the fees and so forth, you can become eligible again for federal student aid. But as long as you're in default, you are not eligible to get any kind of Pell Grants or any more student loans. Your credit rating is going to be harmed. So if you go to buy a cell phone or get a car loan or a home loan, this is going to come up again and again that you defaulted on a student loan. Any tax refund that you might be due could be withheld by the government, and your wages could be garnished, right? So you go to get your $1,200 check, and maybe you only get $800, and you say, hey, what happened to the other $400 here? And it's been garnished to repay your loan. Collection fees and penalties are going to be high. Even if it's just something where you don't repay a loan of $1,500 and you let it go for a year, you might end up being asked to repay $2,500, right? So it's going to be a lot with the collection fees, the penalties. Once it gets into a collection agency's hands, you're going to have some issues. So the moral of the story is, do not default. Now, I know that sounds easier said than done, but there's some alternatives to defaulting. And one of the things that you can do is you can change your repayment plan, right? Once you've actually defaulted, you can't change your repayment. You can't say, you know what, actually I want that income-based repayment. I'd have a lower monthly payment. It's too late. Once you've defaulted, your options have been drastically reduced. But before you get to that point where you default, if you're like, hey, I just can't make my payment. Let's say your monthly payment is $568 a month. And you say, I'm not going to be able to make that payment. Immediately start looking into options of changing your repayment plan. See if you can go on income-based repayment, income contingent repayment, pay as you earn, something to get your monthly payment to be lower. Even though you might pay more interest in the long run, you're going to reduce your monthly payment. So if something happens, you're getting fewer hours at your job, and you say, hey, I don't think I can make my monthly payment. If you change your payment plan, you'll have a chance to be able to continue making on-time payments. If for some reason you say, hey, look, this isn't feasible, reducing my monthly payment does nothing, maybe you lost your job and you say, hey, look, my monthly income is zero. Well, in that case, what you want to look into is getting a deferment. So if you're unemployed, you can get a deferment for up to 3 years. If you have some kind of financial hardship and so forth, you can get a 3-year deferment. Now it's not going to get you just apply and you get it for the entire 3 years. Every 6 months or so, you're going to have to continually renew this. They're going to ask you, are you looking for work, and so forth. And there are other types of deferments you can get as well. If you go into the Peace Corps, something like that. And I've got a video on that you can check out. But if you're eligible for deferment, you absolutely want to take it if you're in the situation where you can't make your monthly payment. If you can't get a deferment, you might be able to get a forbearance. So a forbearance is not going to be as long as a deferment. You can't get a 3-year forbearance, for example. It's up to 12 months. You can reduce or hold off your payments where you're not making payments for as long as 12 months. If, for example, your monthly payment is more than 20% of your monthly income, in that case, you could get a forbearance. Also, it's discretionary at the part of the lender. If you're just having some kind of financial hardship or illness, you might be able, if you can get your loan servicer to agree to get a forbearance. So if you can't get a deferment, you should definitely check and see if you're eligible for a forbearance. And if you cannot get a deferment or a forbearance, then by all means, look into changing your repayment plan. Do whatever is necessary to avoid a default. And remember that when you have a default, you might think, well, hey, at some point I can just declare bankruptcy. I can just declare bankruptcy, just like I can get rid of credit card debt or something like that in bankruptcy. But student loans are almost impossible to discharge in bankruptcy. So your student loans are with you for life. So it's unfortunate. You have to get used to just the idea that however much you borrowed, somehow, some way, you're going to have to try and figure out a way to be able to come out, work something out with your loan servicer so that you do not go into default. Because once you're in default and the collection fees start to pile up and you have limited options, you can't get a nice repayment plan or go into deferment or all that, it's going to be like you're trying to go uphill.